all the pressing issues in our nation and around the world, it's a challenge to hit on everything we want to talk about here on the program, but we try. We certainly try. Well, there were a few other items that we wanted to touch on today, so I'm going to turn now to today's panel of FRC in-house experts to discuss them. With me now in studio is Suzanne Bowdey, editorial director and senior writer at the Washington Stand, Travis Weber, Vice President for Policy and Government Affairs here at the Family Research Council. Suzanne, Travis, thanks so much for joining me.
Thanks, you.
Tony.
Okay. I want to start, and I touched on this earlier, the hearing in the Senate Commerce Committee on examining the impact of technology on America's children. Suzanne, this is one of the few areas where there seems to be bipartisan agreement.
Well, I think everyone understands that technology is both good and bad, good parts and bad parts to it. And we've had smartphones now long enough to realize that there are some real harms to children after a significant amount of time is spent on them. I feel like every week we're seeing a new study that says, hey, if kids are on their phones or on social media, they're going to suffer from anxiety, depression, their brains are actually changing, ADHD, obesity, sleeplessness.
Yeah, we used to just call that BAD when I was a kid.
And so there's been this real global movement lately to put some guardrails up to protect children. We saw in Australia the age requirement that they put on for 16 years old to access social media, and now in the U.S. Senate, Ted Cruz is saying, maybe we need to do that here. Let's put an age requirement on of 13 and see what happens.
I chuckled earlier. Casey made the comment, maybe your mom wasn't wrong when she told you not to sit so close to the TV. Did your mom ever tell you that? I mean, I heard that all the time. But it brings up an important point. What happened to parents telling kids, you don't need to be on that device all the time. You don't need to sit so close to the TV. So what happened to parental intervention? I mean, that's a part of this. I don't think government regulation is the whole issue, but one of the aspects, Travis said that was coming up in the committee today that Senator Cruz was focused on was the algorithms. To make this addictive that draws children in.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to reflect on this, right? Because, Tony, it's we should be reflecting on, can this be solved with government intervention and policy proposals? We'd say the right policy proposals are good to be helpful, not going to solve the full problem because it's ultimately spiritual and cultural. To your point about parents, are they involved? What's the approach they're taking with their children? And we're seeing this issue being magnified through AI. We've been, the FRC filed a comment with the administration highlighting the impact of developing technology and AI on the human relationship as chatbots engage in relationships, fake relationships with people. People are drawn in by them. And so the dynamics that we're discussing here, I think, are going to become even more of cause for concern. And Tony, I really think this is a time to draw people back to the grounding of the Word, which we're very focused on, but ultimately what God has ordained in terms of the family and the structures God has put in place to deal with things from the kingdom perspective.
Like number one, parents.
Yep.
Right.
But there's another element to this. The social media platforms enjoy immunity. So when we talk about these algorithms and this addictive nature of what they've created, if a parent can't take any action if the platform leads to harm.
Right, and there is a lot of harm. You're talking about exposure to pornography, cyberbullying. You're having kids with suicidal ideations, trafficking,
and you can
do nothing. Right, parents are powerless unless they shut it off, and that's an option now. And I think more parents are taking it.
That's one option, but I also think if there's something the government should do is make them accountable, where people can sue them and take them to court.
Right.
The corporations have incredible power these days, whether it's these corporations we're talking about. We've seen this in terms of the effort to go after Pornhub and its money and entrenchment in that industry. We've referenced gambling, the power of the corporations behind gambling.
And now online.
Yeah,
right.
There's
using these same addictive, gambling's already addictive, but you add to that the online nature of these algorithms, and it's through the roof.
Pharmaceutical industry, these are all very powerful industries, right? And some are more clearly into nefarious, wrong, harmful activity than others. But either case, they're all powerful industries that have their own interests.
This is where I like the trial lawyers. Because, I know back when I was in trial lawyers are only the bad guys because they're going after business. But you know what? big business is a problem. There are a lot of Christian trial lawyers out there, and we need them. Yeah. We need them to be able to go and hold these people accountable.
I mean, Tony, I saw this when practicing law. Like, cases are often different from each other. You have to look at each case. And, you know, there's an element of justice here when we think about it, because we're referencing business and corporations. Really, from God's perspective, we want justice. And when the world and business departs from justice, it is no longer on the side of God.
That is God's primary focus throughout the Old Testament, the issue of justice when it comes to how people are treated. Yeah. It is central to any government, is that the people have justice.
Whether it's in business, civil government, media, entertainment, any other sphere of society, God sees all of it, and people are going to have to give account.
And by the way, that I'll give a plug for our God and Government course. That's a central theme in our God and Government course, found on the Stand Firm app. All right, I'm going to go to another. Was that a shameless plug? All right,
appropriate.
All right, let's move to another topic. Yesterday we were talking about the life issue, but we did not get into the appropriations bills that have been making their way through, which is actually a good thing because for the first couple of decades we're now doing funding the way, or we're almost doing funding the way it should be with appropriations bills, but there's some problems with some of those, Suzanne.
There are some problems, and unfortunately, Democrats are not in power, but one way that they're getting their agenda through is by slipping in these earmarks that we know, because we've combed through these appropriations bills, that advance their agenda on things like abortion and LGBT issues. And I want to give a shout out to our GA team. They went through a lot of the bills that are before Congress now in the Senate, and what they found is shocking. What they found is hundreds of millions of dollars going to groups that either carry out abortion or that have an LGBT woke ideology, or who are in favor of gender transitions, even for minors. We're talking about $60 million right now in current appropriations bills in the Senate that would go to groups, hospitals, organizations that promote abortion. We're talking about $32 million that would go to hospitals, organizations that promote gender transitions.
Is this coming out of the Senate or the House?
This is the Senate right now. Okay. Now, I will say the House has done an incredible job. And honestly, the fact that we're even talking about Congress doing appropriations bills is extraordinary. Right. I mean, the fact that this is newsworthy shows you how dysfunctional Congress has become.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a couple of decades.
It's been 30 years since we've had regular order. And for those who don't know what regular order is, it means that literally you're writing the bills, you're having hearings, you're having debates, you're conversations, you're amending the bills, you're passing them, as opposed to like, we're down to the wire, let's bundle all these bills together, let's pass them in the dead of night. Nobody's read them. They're full of waste. They're full of these earmarks like this, and it's a disaster for the American people.
That's how you get to $38 trillion in
right,
debt.
Exactly. So our team has been vigilant. There's a lot still to do, but I do want to commend John Thune and Mike Johnson, who have spearheaded an extraordinary return to normalcy where governing is concerned. The House has passed 75% of its appropriations bills, 8 out of the 12. Now, there's still a lot of work to be done. Unfortunately, we're looking at them saving the hardest ones for last, and they're down to the wire again in terms of a government shutdown, which would happen January 30th, and now the Senate's on a 10-day recess. So there is work to do, but we have seen real progress with this leadership.
So, Travis, how are we addressing these provisions, these earmarks that are coming out of the Senate? Because, you know, the Republicans don't have really, well, there's a couple of things in the Senate. Number one, they're not all conservative in the Republican ranks, although most of them are pretty good. But then secondly, they're having to contend with the Democrats in order to get something through.
Yeah, so Tony, I think in this scenario that Suzanne's talking about and what you're raising, it's very key. Obviously, we have to identify the concerning provisions, identify the ones that shouldn't be in there, and then sometimes it's interactions and engagement directly with the member and the office and their staff about our concerns and other groups' concerns as well, and constituents' concerns who are looking at this and saying this, we don't like this being in here. And then, Tony, sometimes these conversations go public and they become aware of what we're concerned about. And that's it's just the necessity of having 100 issues or more on the table. You know, there's a lot to keep track of, and this is where our viewers and listeners play a part in this.
Absolutely.
Their voice is essential to help make sure that family values related issues are discussed and there's enough attention put on them, and they're not dismissed or overridden by others who are going to make noise on their own issues.
this is, we don't have time to do a whole class on this, but it's important to understand how this process works. And, you know, I based on some of the comments, I actually do read some of the comments that come in on Facebook and else, and I know some people like to weigh in. And I love to hear from people, especially when they like what I have to say. But some are saying anytime we criticize the administration, you shouldn't criticize the administration. Or you shouldn't criticize the Republicans. Or others say, you know, you should just blow it all up. You know, the process is, if we're silent about the bad things, you're going to get more of it. If we raise the concerns, we have a chance to dial it back. Doesn't mean it's going to be perfect. We're never going to have a perfect product coming out of this country, out of this city. But we can make it better. So our voices shape it. We're not the only voice in the process, but we are a shaping voice. And so it's important, as you said, Travis, that people speak about these things, weigh in on these things, make it clear it's unacceptable. But at the end of the day, we're going to try to get it as good as we can, and if it's acceptable, we'll accept some things.
Yeah, I mean, Tony, I remember a couple years ago is an instance of, it was a provision regarding adoption and sort of something that people were not focused on much, that would have affected the ease with which people could adopt children. And some in the Christian community around the U.S. all of a sudden got wind of it and started writing Congress and raising things publicly about their concern about it coming out. And the response of the members of Congress was basically like, well, we weren't aware that it was in there, and/or we did not know it was important to you, to the people raising it. They needed to hear from it, and it was no mark against the. It wasn't a commentary about, oh, you shouldn't be saying something publicly about your concern. That was necessary for them to become aware of it and address it. And they actually got it out and they fixed it.
And because of a lot of the attention that was given last week to the Hyde Amendment, the administration seems to be walking that back a little bit. Of course, we have the abortion pill, the abortion drug that we talked about yesterday. We still have that petition that we're going to take. So, folks, if you'd like to sign that petition, simply text LIFE to 67742. That's the abortion pill, the drug that the FDA has set these, actually keeping in place the Biden-era policies. That's got to stop, and we need to speak into that. All right, we just have a couple minutes left. Travis, today you were at an event hosted by one of our colleagues, senior fellow here, Bob Fu. He's the founder and president of China Aid, which defends believers in China. Tell us quickly about that event.
Yeah, so Bob Fu, senior fellow with FRC, and Tony, you mentioned his other role, but he's trying to draw attention to what's happening right now in Kazakhstan, a country not many may be aware of, but it's a neighbor of China. So what's happened there is you have ethnic Uyghurs who have they border the area of China where China has been persecuting the Uyghurs, and some of these individuals in Kazakhstan are protesting the CCP's policies, like many people here, concerned about the influence of the Chinese Communist Party and their long arm overseas, pursuing opponents, harassing them even in the U.S. Well, they're harassing them in Kazakhstan and pressure the Kazakh government to prosecute these people for protesting, and they're facing a possible 10-year jail sentence. So Bob is saying this is an example of the CCP's transnational repression. So we agree. We looked at that and said this is right. We need to stand based on the Word and what God says about us being created in His image, and have everyone having the dignity, even those overlooked in other parts of the world, to stand up and raise their voice as a matter of their conscience. And we want to say to the Chinese government that their coercion will not be tolerated.
They're doing the same thing here in this country.
They're doing the same thing, and the Kazakh government needs to stand up. And that's we're trying to raise awareness of what's happening. But Tony, this comes from our Christian faith. God tells us what the human being and the human person is, and we all have dignity in His sight.
Yeah, the CCP is. Bad organization.
They are bad.
Suzanne, Travis got the last word. Right?
Okay,
Travis, Suzanne, thanks for being with me.